Namaskar. A warm welcome to World News and Indian Perspective on All India Radio. This is R.S. Raghu and with me is Nishit Kumar bringing glimpses of the major developments of the day from across the globe. Over the next half an hour, we shall bring you the latest from the world of politics, economy, sports, entertainment and more. The headlines. Prime Minister Narendra Modi concludes his visit to Japan for 4th Quad Leaders Summit in Tokyo, holds bilateral discussions and mutually beneficial consultations with Quad partners. Quad leaders reiterate their strong resolve to maintain peace and stability in the Indo-Pacific region. New fellowship program launched at Quad Summit to bring together top minds of partner countries in science, technology, engineering and mathematics. India and Japan agree to work together to enhance cooperation in defense manufacturing, investment and trade. Prime Minister Modi thanks government and people of Japan for their warm hospitality. World Economic Forum launches alliance to supercharge India's climate action. Indo-Dutch pair of Rohan Bopanna and Matwé Middelkoop advances to men's doubles second round of French Open tennis. India go down 2-5 to Japan in Asia Cup Hockey Championship in Jakarta. And in IPL cricket, Rajasthan Royals set a victory target of 189 runs before Gujarat Titans at Eden Gardens in Kolkata. Prime Minister Narendra Modi has left for New Delhi after a fruitful visit to Japan. In a tweet, Mr. Modi said during the fruitful visit he attended various bilateral and multilateral programs. He expressed happiness that Quad has emerged as a vibrant forum to further global good. Mr. Modi said he also had excellent bilateral meetings with all the Quad leaders. The Prime Minister said he had excellent discussions with the business leaders of Japan and an engaging interaction with the vibrant Indian community in Japan. He thanked the government and the people of Japan for the warm hospitality. During bilateral talks with US President Joe Biden in Tokyo on Tuesday, Mr. Modi said their discussions will give velocity to this positive momentum. He said that India and United States share similar views on Indo-Pacific at the bilateral level as well as with the like-minded countries. Both leaders shared their views on a wide range of issues and discussed ways to deepen the India-US friendship. A report.
The talks were wide-ranging and covered multiple aspects of India-US ties, including trade, investment, defense, as well as people-to-people linkages. In his remarks, Mr. Modi said, India and US partnership in the true sense is a partnership of trust. He said common interests and values have strengthened this bond of trust between the two countries.
भारत और अमेरिका की स्ट्रेटेजिक पार्टनरशिप सही मायने में एक पार्टनरशिप ऑफ ट्रस्ट है. हमारे साझा मूल्यों और सुरक्षा सहित कई क्षेत्रों में हमारे समान हितों ने इस ट्रस्ट के बॉन्ड को मजबूत किया है. हमारे पीपल टू पीपल रिलेशंस और घनिष्ठ आर्थिक संबंधों में भी हमारी पार्टनरशिप को यूनिक बनाते. हमारे बीच ट्रेड और निवेश में भी निरंतर विस्तार होता जा रहा है, यद्यपि ये हमारे पोटेंशियल से अभी बहुत कम है.
Prime Minister Modi said people-to-people ties and strong economic cooperation make India-US partnership unique. He said bilateral trade and investment relations are also steadily on the rise, but they are below the potential. He expressed confidence that with the conclusion of the US Investment Incentive Agreement, there will be concrete progress in investment between the two countries. The US President expressed happiness that India and US have reached agreement for US Development Finance Corporation. Mr. Biden also said he is glad that both the nations are renewing the Indo-US Vaccine Action Program.
I'm pleased that we've reached agreement for the U.S. Development Finance Corporation to continue its important work in India, supporting vaccine production, clean energy initiatives, and I'm also glad we're renewing the Indo-US Vaccine Action Program.
Prime Minister Modi also held bilateral talks with his Australian counterpart Anthony Albanese. The talks focused on deepening the developmental cooperation between India and Australia across diverse sectors. Both the leaders reviewed the multifaceted cooperation under the Comprehensive Strategic Partnership, including in trade and investment, defense manufacturing, renewable energy, including green hydrogen, education, science and technology, agricultural research, sports and people-to-people ties. Both Prime Ministers affirmed their desire to continue the positive momentum in the bilateral relationship. Bilateral discussion was held between Mr. Modi and Japanese Prime Minister Fumio Kishida. They agreed to work together to enhance cooperation in defense manufacturing, investment and trade, and people-to-people ties for mutual benefit. The leaders reaffirmed their commitment to realize the shared vision of a free and open Indo-Pacific underpinned by inclusiveness and a rules-based order. Earlier, Prime Minister Modi participated in the Quad Leaders Meet along with the US President, Prime Minister of Australia Anthony Albanese, and Prime Minister of Japan Fumio Kishida. In his opening remarks at the summit, Mr. Modi said that Quad has carved a niche for itself in such a short span of time before the world. He added that on Tuesday, Quad's scope has become vast. He said the mutual trust and determination of Quad nations is giving new energy and enthusiasm to democratic powers.
इतने कम समय में क्वाड समूह ने विश्व पटल पर एक महत्वपूर्ण स्थान बना लिया है। आज क्वाड का स्कोप व्यापक हो गया है और स्वरूप प्रभावी हो गया है। हमारा आपसी विश्वास, हमारा डिटर्मिनेशन लोकतांत्रिक शक्तियों को नई ऊर्जा और उत्साह दे रहा है। क्वाड के स्तर पर हमारे आपसी सहयोग से एक फ्री, ओपन और इंक्लूसिव इंडो पैसिफिक क्षेत्र को प्रोत्साहन मिल रहा है, जो हम सभी का साझा उद्देश्य है। क्वाड इंडो पैसिफिक क्षेत्र के लिए एक कंस्ट्रक्टिव एजेंडा लेकर चल रहा है। इससे क्वाड की छवि एक फोर्स फॉर गुड के रूप में और भी सुदृढ़ होती जाएगी।
Mr. Modi stressed that a free, open and inclusive Indo-Pacific region is getting encouraged at the Quad level with mutual cooperation. He called it the shared goal of all Quad countries. Mr. Modi also congratulated the newly elected Australian Prime Minister Anthony Albanese and extended his best wishes. He said the Australian Prime Minister's presence at Quad within 24 hours of taking the oath reflects his strong commitment towards it and the strength of Quad friendship. The Quad Summit provided an opportunity to take stock of the progress made so far on Quad's initiatives and also give guidance for the future. The leaders reviewed progress of Quad initiatives, identified new areas of cooperation, and provided strategic guidance for future collaboration. This is Saira Mujtaba for World News All India Radio.
Prime Minister Modi has invited former Japanese Prime Minister Yoshihide Suga to lead a delegation of Japanese MPs to India. Mr. Suga called on Prime Minister Modi on Tuesday in Tokyo. The two leaders exchanged views on further strengthening the India-Japan Special Strategic and Global Partnership.
A new Quad Fellowship program has been launched on Tuesday at the Quad Summit in Tokyo. This is the first of its kind scholarship program that will bring together the top minds of Australia, India, Japan and the United States in science, technology, engineering and mathematics. The fellowship will sponsor 100 students per year, 25 from each Quad country, to pursue master's and doctoral degrees at the leading SCEM graduate universities in the United States. In his message, Prime Minister Narendra Modi said the Quad Fellowship program is a wonderful and unique initiative. He said this prestigious fellowship will offer our students greater opportunities to pursue graduate and doctorate programs in science, technology, engineering and mathematics. Mr. Modi said it will encourage academic excellence and promote people-to-people linkages between our countries. The Prime Minister encouraged Indian students to apply for the Quad Fellowship program and join the next generation of STEM leaders and innovators building a better future for humanity. External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar met U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken in Tokyo on Tuesday. In a tweet, Dr. Jaishankar said they continue the conversation on the Ukraine conflict, its knock-on effects and important regional issues. He said they will work together to take forward the Quad understandings. The minister also met his Japanese counterpart Yoshimasa Hayashi on the sidelines of the Quad summit. They exchanged views on the regional and global issues and agreed to cooperate closely in this respect.
In today's Hotspot section, we bring you a discussion on Quad Summit and Indo-Pacific Economic Framework for a Secure Tomorrow. In conversation are Deepa Gopalan Badva, former ambassador to Japan, and Nilova Roy Chaudhary, journalist.
Ambassador Deepa Gopalan Vadva, why is today's summit such a significant one? I mean, the new Australian Prime Minister attended barely 24 hours after being sworn in. Why is Quad so important?
I think the fact that you said that there have been 4 summits in 15 months, it says a lot about the purpose of this a formation, if an informal grouping, as it was called. The fact that it has begun to take form, it has purpose, and from initial, when they talked about their principles and they looked at the regional and the global situation, they have gone beyond that into very specific areas of cooperation, not only among themselves, the four of them, but also which involves other partner countries in the Indo-Pacific, and therefore for the peace, stability and prosperity of the greater region of the Indo-Pacific. And the fact that you just mentioned, I mean, Prime Minister Albanese, and we were wondering whether there would be a change after the Labour government was voted in, but he has given as much importance to the Quad by coming and joining the Quad Summit within such a short period. And you will see the number of very substantive agreements which have issued from here. And I think very important is the entire atmosphere was so positive, was constructive, it was forward-looking. It's a great opportunity for these leaders to be meeting together. And, you know, it goes beyond, I mean, when you meet so frequently, I think it's like human interaction. You get to know each other far much more better. And you also strengthen the individual bilateral relations, I think.
I mean, for example, the joint statement at the end of their discussion said that in our first year of cooperation, we established the Quad's dedication to a positive and practical agenda. In our second year, we are committed to deliver on this promise, making the region more resilient. So the deliverables seem to be coming sort of considerably faster at this point of time, and they genuinely have a sense of purpose. And I thought that was different. Would that be right?
Absolutely right. And you've got to look a little back when you look at it. What happened was when it was sort of resuscitated in 2017, it was official levels, you know, on the margins of other meetings that officials would meet. And look what's happened. Look at the pace of progress in the last 2 years or so. I mean, this shows the purpose. The setting up of the working groups, they identified 6 areas. They set up working groups of experts. They said how they could collaborate together. For example, when you talk about delivering, the most wonderful example was the COVID-19 vaccine. So what we found was that there was technology from the United States manufactured in India, financing by Japan, and the logistics provided by Australia. And I was reading somewhere that they have reached out about and been able to deliver about 260 million doses in the Indo-Pacific region. So you have these 4 coming together with their strengths, with their expertise, and being able to really do something for the greater good of the region. This is very important for their credibility too. This is maturing in a very positive direction, I think. And it's all about form, structure, rules, predictability, and it's inclusive. So that is why I think there's much to celebrate of the way this grouping is progressing.
In fact, the ASEAN, 2 of the ASEAN members, I believe, got a total of some 675 million doses, Thailand and Cambodia, apparently. The other thing that's interesting was this emphasis on infrastructure building in the region. Is this a new phenomenon?
Infrastructure was certainly one of those 6 areas that we had identified. But I think what has happened since is that people have seen that there is a gap between the needs and financing. And what is also perhaps in the back of one's mind, the success of the BRI really has been infrastructure financing, you know, these huge projects that they have done. So the Quad wants to do the same thing, but wants to do it without, you talked about indebtedness, and do it in a different sort of way with transparency. And the fact that they have now come and said, and this is one of the big announcements out of this summit, that there would be $50 billion investment in the next 5 years in infrastructure building. And in this infrastructure building, they're also looking at climate resilience, they're looking at sustainable infrastructure, so doing it with the highest standards possible. So infrastructure certainly is a need. And I think, you know, India being one of the Quad partners, we perhaps will be one of the beneficiaries of this. But we could also together, of course, reach out to the countries or countries like in the Indo-Pacific, where I think the China's activities in that region, there's been some concern about it, their security agreement that they have just signed, the Solomons and so on. I think what we're doing through this infrastructure initiative is to give a choice to countries. There are options, there are alternatives. And here you have something that is far more transparent, far more rule-based, and maybe that is what they will opt for.
With the example of Sri Lanka upon us, I think the indebtedness aspect of the BRI, the China's Belt and Road Initiative, is something that is sort of being held up. So is there a message to China in all of this in terms of how it's been behaving, pushing its infrastructure projects and so on along?
It's very interesting when you look at this joint statement. I mean, there is neither mention of China or, for that matter, while in mention of Ukraine, there's no mention of Russia. But when you look at the language, I mean, there are various parts of this which very clearly talk about China. The change of status quo through force, the usage of, for example, the problems in the East China and the South China Sea, the militarization of Ireland, and including the debt traps and so on. So I think it's very clear that there's no ambiguity as who this is directed against. And certainly, I think these examples such as Sri Lanka's experience would also make countries think and, look at whatever the Quad can do together when they reach out to them.
In fact, Myanmar is another country that has been named specifically, and Quad expressed concern about the status in Myanmar. And again, that's another country where China is really mired, as it were. So, I mean, it is clear that Quad opposes any provocative or unilateral attempt to change the status quo and stuff like that. China has also been reacting ballistically, but how effective can an organization like Quad actually be in the long run, do you think?
But I think what is important is when these leaders of really four fairly major countries get together and when they discuss the regional and international situation, people listen and they hear, and there's a very clear statement that issues from them. So in looking at the regional situation, of course, it's interesting. When they talked about Ukraine, there was a lot of emphasis on the humanitarian crisis that is there. That is what everybody has been able to agree upon. And then they have looked also at the other issues, I think, the other areas of concern in the region. For example, certainly the denuclearization of the Korean Peninsula, North Korea's missile program, which threatens Japan, I think, as much as it threatens South Korea. The situation in Myanmar. There are certainly differences. When you get together, these four countries, it's not like you're completely convergent views. I would think that Japan and India have a slightly different take on what is happening in Myanmar from certainly the US and Australia. But the fact is that you've got to resolve the situation over there and, also not leave a vacuum there which would help China to move in more, which is also a concern that I think we have. Then they also talked about, of course, the East and the China Sea. And very importantly, sometimes when you look at these joint statements, you can identify which country would have put that language in or, would have proposed the language. So you see a very, very large and strong statement on terrorism. And certainly that would have been what India would have posed, including on the Mumbai and the Pathankot attack, and not to use Afghan territory as a base for terrorist actions, and recalling the UNSC security, the FATF, and so on. So I think each country, among the four of us, also security concerns that we have, they do get voiced in this document. It gives also an unambiguous message. Again, I keep saying it, I've been hearing it in other fora to talk about it, is the security elements of the Quad. I think repeatedly we have said we are not into alliances, it is not a security grouping, but on the other hand, quite in reality, a lot of the cooperation that we envisage, particularly when you talk about maritime domain awareness, when you talk about what you're going to do in cybersecurity, in space technology and so on, certainly has a strong underpinning of security concerns and will strengthen our own individual, I think, security environments. So I think that is the way one looks at what has come out of the Quad.
The other very interesting thing that happened in Tokyo was, of course, the Indo-Pacific Economic Framework for Prosperity that was signed yesterday, and that includes a lot of the ASEAN members as well. Now, is that something also that, sort of builds on what Quad has been suggesting?
So this seems to be an American initiative, of course, and, President Biden, I think, had spoken of it at the East Asia Summit, have economic framework for prosperity. Now, what is interesting about this to begin with is all of us who thought that because of what has happened in Ukraine, and you find President Biden and, the Europeans, I think, distracted, and therefore, the, attention is moving away from Indo-Pacific. I think this is the United States saying that, the Indo-Pacific continues to be extremely important to us. They're also recognizing that this is the most dynamic economic area in the world and we want to be there. So I think there's a very clear message to the countries of the region as well as to China. And they have, of course, come with these four pillars. It's a bit of an unorthodox thing in the sense that it is not a trade pact, so to speak, and that, of course, is of reluctance of the Americans, and, they're looking at their own constituencies there, which in a way suits us as well. But on the other hand, it is looking at facilitating investment, trade, everything to do with economic development in the region. So let's see where this goes, in the sense that it's very, very initial. And my own take is that, one is going to have consultations, one is going to have negotiations, and then one is going to see, where can we find common ground. And of course, the fact that this is not a Quad initiative, but it is, another 12, 13 countries are involved in this. So it is important in the sense, again, for the simple reason that, it's an alternative to the China-dominated RCEP or the APEC, where they're very much there, and the CPTPP, which they want to join, which they're very keen to join. So, they're saying that, I think what at least Americans are saying, and those others who have at this point of time, in a way, sort of been co-opted, if I may say, and it's the beginning of a process, to say that, look, we all can get together, and there are other models, and we need to write the rules. And this is something that they're talking about, writing certain rules about how you trade and how do you diversify supply chains. And this is important. I think a lot of this is about really diversification and this terrible dependence on China. I think this is what we're trying to, wean the Quad countries and others away from.
Thank you very much, Ambassador Wadhwa.
This is All India Radio giving you the news. For quick news updates round the clock, follow us on Twitter at AIR News Alerts.
U.S. President Joe Biden launched the Indo-Pacific Economic Framework for Prosperity, IPEF, with a dozen initial partners. These countries include India, Australia, Japan, Brunei, Indonesia, Korea, Malaysia, New Zealand, the Philippines, Singapore, Thailand and Vietnam. Together, these countries represent 40% of the world GDP. IPEF is aimed at strengthening ties in this critical Indo-Pacific region to define the coming decades for technological innovations and the global economy. The framework will create a stronger, fairer, more resilient economy for families, workers and businesses in the United States and in the Indo-Pacific region. Speaking on the occasion, Mr. Biden said they were writing the new rules for the 21st century economy that will help their economies grow faster and fairer. Endorsing the initiative, Prime Minister Narendra Modi thanked Mr. Biden for the initiative and said that the IPEF is a declaration of our collective will to make the region an engine of global economic growth. He expressed his commitment to work with all the Indo-Pacific countries for an inclusive and flexible IPEF. Mr. Modi also declared that the foundation of resilient supply chains, a major focus area for the framework that will apparently provide an alternative to China's approach to critical economic issues, must be three T's, that is trust, transparency and timeliness. The World Economic Forum, WEF, has launched the India chapter of the Alliance of the CEO Climate Action Leaders to supercharge India's climate action and decarbonization efforts. Part of the World Economic Forum's Climate Action Platform, the Alliance will continue efforts to achieve the vision outlined in the white paper released last year, Mission 2070, a Green New Deal for a Net Zero India on India's low-carbon transition by 2070. It will bring together the government, businesses and other key stakeholders to achieve Prime Minister Narendra Modi's ambitious Panchamrit pledge, which includes the country's net zero target by 2070. A collaboration between the management consultancy Kearney and the Indian think tank Observer Research Foundation, the alliance will serve as a high-level platform to support business leaders in planning and implementing plans and programs to achieve climate targets, including net zero economic growth.
The World Health Organization WHO has said that monkeypox can be contained in countries outside of Africa where the virus is not usually detected. The WHO's emerging disease lead Maria van Kerkhove said at a new conference on Tuesday, "This is a containable situation and there is a need to stop human-to-human transmission." She further said, transmission is really happening from skin-to-skin contact. Most of the people who have been identified have more of a mild disease. According to media reports, more than 100 cases of the virus, which cause a rash and a fever, have been confirmed in Europe, America and Australia. Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov on Tuesday said that Moscow will consider offers of re-establishing ties with the West and think whether that is needed. According to Russian Foreign Ministry's website, Lavrov said that Russia will also focus on developing ties with China. He said Moscow's goal now is to further develop ties with China.
Ukrainian Deputy Prime Minister Yulia Sviridenko has said that the international community should help secure safe passage for food grain export to help Ukraine and avoid world hunger. Mr. Yulia Sviridenko said some sort of corridor was needed, adding that Ukraine's inability to export its grain has led to global food prices soaring. It has also raised the prospect of famines in the countries which depend on its exports. He also urged the international community to help lift the blockade of the country's seaports. In French Open tennis, Indo-Dutch pair of Rohan Bopanna and Matvey Middlecoop advanced to the men's doubles second round after beating local pair of Sasha Guermard van Berg and Luca van Asche on Tuesday. The 16th-seeded Indo-Dutch pair overcame at the lower-ranked home combo 6-4, 6-1 in the opening round. Ramkumar Ramanathan, teamed up with the American Hunter Rees, will play against the German team of Daniel Altmaier and Oscar Otte in men's doubles first round on Wednesday. In the women's doubles, Sania Mirza and her Czech partner Lucy Radeka opened their campaign against Italy's Jasmine Paolini and Martina Trevisanon on Wednesday.
In the Asia Cup Hockey Championship, India went down 2-5 to Japan at GBK Arena in Jakarta, Indonesia. With this defeat, India will still find themselves at the third position of the Pool A table. Japan will move to the top spot with 2 wins from the same number of matches. India will meet hosts Indonesia on Thursday to round off their league engagements. In IPL cricket, Rajasthan Royals has set a victory target of 189 runs before Gujarat Titans at Eden Gardens in Kolkata. In reply, Gujarat Titans were 115 for 3 in 13 overs when reports last came in. Earlier, Gujarat won the toss and elected to field first.
And now let us take a look at the major developments around the world as reported in the foreign press. First, we have a look at the press reports on China. CNN writes China is alarmed by the Quad, but its threats are driving the group closer together. HT writes Apple to choose India over China as patience wears thin with Xi regime and Beijing-Washington rift. The Guardian reports Joe Biden has said that the US would intervene militarily to defend Taiwan if it came under attack from China in an unusually forceful presidential statement in support of self-governing that drew a defiant response from Beijing.
Now let's have a look at the press reports on Nepal. The Himalayan Times writes that a bird strike is suspected in the aircraft of Jazeera Airways that met with disturbance while landing at Gautam Budh International Airport. Let's have a look at the press reports on Pakistan. Express Tribune reports that as the PTI is all set to march in Islamabad on Wednesday, the PMLN government and its allies have decided that the current setup will complete its tenure till August 2023. A quick look at the headlines once again. Prime Minister Narendra Modi concludes his visit to Japan for 4th Quad Leader Summit in Tokyo, holds bilateral discussions and mutually beneficial consultations with Quad partners. Quad leaders reiterate their strong resolve to maintain peace and stability in the Indo-Pacific region. New fellowship program launched at Quad Summit to bring together top minds of partner countries in science, technology, engineering and mathematics. India and Japan agree to work together to enhance cooperation in defense manufacturing, investment and trade. Prime Minister Modi thanks government and people of Japan for their warm hospitality. World Economic Forum launches alliance to supercharge India's climate action. Indo-Dutch pair of Rohan Bopanna and Matvey Middlecoop advances to men's doubles second round of French Open tennis. India go down 2-5 to Japan in Asia Cup Hockey Championship in Jakarta. And in IPL cricket, Rajasthan Royals set a victory target of 189 runs before Gujarat Titans at Eden Gardens in Kolkata. And now, before we end, let us listen to Mahatma Gandhi's favorite bhajan Vaishnav Jan by artists from Cameroon.
पर दुख के उपकार करे तुये मन अभिमानी रे सकल लोक मानौरे बंदे निजन करे रे भाष्कर्ष मन निष्कलकारे जन जन जनने रे
And with that, we end this bulletin. We'll be back at the same time tomorrow with the next edition of World News.